Although the Harry Potter books and movies were released some time ago, there continues to be an insatiable thirst for more content among fans of all levels. And while 7 core books and 8 movies might seem like a lot, it feels considerably less substantial when spread over 27 years, a milestone we've just reached, as the first book was published on June 26, 1997. Since the last book came out in 2007, we've had a few more films and we've had scribblings published here and there. We've even had a few prequel stories, but for the most part, extended lore pertaining to the Wizarding World is somewhat limited. But that certainly doesn't mean there's nothing, which is why today I've begun to compile a list of all JK Rowling certified and published secondary content. If you think you know the world of Harry Potter now, well, you're about to get to know it a lot better. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Like I just mentioned, today we're going to be diving into any and all extended lore published by JK Rowling. I feel that this is an important distinction to be made, as only content published by her can truly be considered canon. The internet is rife with fan-published material, and a lot of it is well written, exciting, and in some cases trumps the source material. However, I'm in the business of analysing the facts, and what makes something canon or fact, in this instance, relies on whether or not it was published by the original author. This video will explore various articles, short stories, and background pieces that expand on the Harry Potter universe, ranging from character biographies and magical creature descriptions to the history of magical locations and institutions. The extended lore is a little all over the place, but I've tried my best to categorize these topics into the following: Hogwarts and related entities, characters and families, magical creatures, potions and spells, Wizarding World lore, Wizarding World locations. This is also just part 1, as there is way too much info here to cover all at once. So today we'll be looking at Hogwarts and related entities. I anticipate that there will be 5 parts in total. Also, in instances where we approach something that I've covered extensively on the channel before, I'll be providing a brief summary and providing a link to the longer, more in-depth explanation. I should also mention that nearly all of this is available at wizardingworld.com. Anyway, it's a doozy, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Ghost plots. You probably won't be too surprised to hear that Rowling, who wrote the 7 Harry Potter books in a 10-year time span, generated a fair bit of information, storylines, plots, characters, that simply never made it into the final versions of the beloved books. And in time, these secondary pieces of information have come to be known as ghost plots. In this article, Rowling discusses the concept of ghost plots, detailing backstories and plotlines for secondary and tertiary characters that were developed but not included in the final Harry Potter books. Over the 17 years that I planned and wrote these 7 Harry Potter books, not to mention Quidditch Through the Ages, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and the Tales of Beedle the Bard, I generated a mass of information about the magical world that never appeared in the books. I liked knowing these things, which was fortunate, given that I couldn't stop my imagination spewing it all out, and often, when I needed a throwaway detail, I had it ready because of the background I developed. I also found myself developing storylines for secondary or even tertiary characters that were superfluous to requirements. More of a wrench were the plots I worked out for some much more important characters that had to be sacrificed for the bigger story. All of these I inwardly termed ghost plots, my private expression for all the untold stories that sometimes seemed quite as real to me as the final cut. I have occasionally been in conversations with the reader and made mention of part of a ghost plot. Looks of consternation cross their faces as, for a split second, they ask themselves whether they have accidentally skipped 20 pages somewhere. I apologize to anyone I might have accidentally wrong-footed in this way. The problem is, literally, all in my head. If you want some examples of these ghost plots, check out my video, 10 Abandoned Harry Potter Plotlines. Platform 9 3/4. Platform 9 3/4 is a magical platform at King's Cross Station in London, hidden between platforms 9 and 10. But most importantly, it's the departure point for the Hogwarts Express, the train responsible for taking students to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. In the Harry Potter story, Harry successfully makes it onto the platform because of the Weasleys, who he luckily just so happens to meet. In this article, JK Rowling dives into the origins of the platform, explaining that she always intended for the magical platform to be a fraction that exists between Muggle platforms. She also discusses the idea of other fractional platforms existing for special magical journeys, like Platform 7.5 for trips to wizard-only villages, or platforms for one-off events. As for 9 3/4, well, it came to her intuitively, and she just happened to like it immediately. In choosing the number of the concealed platform that would take young witches and wizards to boarding school, I decided that it would have to be a number between those of the Muggle platforms. Therefore, it was clearly a fraction. This raised the interesting question of how many other fractional platforms lay between the whole numbered platforms at King's Cross, and I concluded that there were probably quite a few. Although these are never mentioned in the book, I like to think that it is possible to take a version of the Orient Express off to wizard-only villages in continental Europe, try Platform 7.5, and that other platforms may be opened on an as-required basis, for instance for large one-off events such as Celestina Warbeck concerts. See your ticket for details. The number 9 3/4 presented itself without much conscious thought, and I liked it so much that I took it at once. It is the 3/4 that makes it, of course. The Hogwarts Express. With a platform that's invisible, inaccessible to muggles, and a rail line that heads to a magical school in the Scottish Highlands, you probably won't be too surprised to hear me say that the railway trip out to Hogwarts is unusual, to say the least. But have you ever wondered how the platform and train were built in the first place? And perhaps more importantly, have you ever considered how Hogwarts students would have arrived at school prior to the existence of the Hogwarts Express? As it turns out, before the Hogwarts Express was introduced, everything was a bit of a mess. As we know from early historical accounts and from the evidence of early woodcuts and engravings, Hogwarts students used to arrive at school in any manner that caught their fancy. Some rode broomsticks, a difficult feat when carrying trunks and pets. Others commandeered enchanted carts and, later, carriages. Some attempted to apparate, often with disastrous effects, as the castle and grounds have always been protected with anti-apparition charms. Others rode a variety of magical creatures. In spite of the accidents attendant on these various modes of magical transport, not to mention the annual Muggle sightings of vast numbers of airborne wizards travelling northwards, it remained the responsibility of parents to convey their children to school, right up until the imposition of the International Statute of Secrecy in 1692. At this point, it became a matter of urgency to find some more discreet method of transporting hundreds of wizarding children from all over Britain to their secret school in the Highlands of Scotland. Portkeys were therefore arranged at collecting points all over Britain. The logistics caused problems from the start. Up to a third of students would fail to arrive every year, having missed their time slot, or been able to find the unobtrusive enchanted object that would transport them to their school. There was also the unfortunate fact that many children were, and are, portkey sick, and the hospital wing was frequently full to bursting for the first few days of every year, while susceptible students overcame their hysterics and nausea. While admitting that portkeys were not an ideal solution to the problem of school transportation, the Ministry of Magic failed to find an acceptable alternative. A return to the unregulated travel of the past was impossible, and yet a more secure route into the school, for instance permitting a fireplace that might officially be entered by flue powder, was strongly resisted by successive headmasters, who did not wish the security of the castle to be breached. A daring and controversial solution to the thorny problem was finally suggested by Minister for Magic Ottoline Gamble, who was much intrigued by Muggle inventions and saw the potential in trains. Where exactly the Hogwarts Express came from has never been conclusively proven, although it is a fact that there are secret records at the Ministry of Magic detailing a mass operation involving 167 memory charms and the largest ever mass concealment charm performed in Britain. The morning after these alleged crimes, a gleaming scarlet steam engine and carriages astounded the villagers of Hogsmeade, who had also not realised they had a railway station, while several bemused Muggle railway workers down in Crewe spent the rest of the year grappling with the uncomfortable feeling that they had mislaid something important. The Hogwarts Express underwent several magical modifications before the Ministry approved it for school use. Many pureblood families were outraged at the idea of their children using Muggle transport, which they claimed was unsafe, insanitary, and demeaning. However, as the ministry decreed that students either rode the train or did not attend the school, the objections were swiftly silenced. Hogwarts Ghosts. Throughout the Harry Potter books and films, ghosts are quite prevalent, particularly at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. But we never really get to learn too much about them. This is where Rowling's article Hogwarts Ghosts comes in, as it describes the histories and roles of each of the Hogwarts house ghosts in greater detail. If you ever wanted to learn more about Nearly Headless Nick, the Bloody Baron, Grey Lady, Fat Friar, Professor Binns, or Moaning Myrtle, then this is the article for you. Rowling also shares her inspirations for these characters, drawing from personal experiences and historical figures. She also mentions early ghost concepts, including some characters that were not used in the final adaptations of the books and films. There was also a Black Knight, the Toad, which left ectoplasm all over its classroom, and a ghost I rather regret not using. His name was Edmund Grubb, and the notes beside his name say, "Expired in the doorway of the dining hall. Sometimes stops people getting in out of spite. Fat Victorian ghost, ate poisonous berries." For a more detailed look at all of the Hogwarts ghosts, go and check out my old video entitled The Ghosts of Hogwarts and Their Stories, Harry Potter Explained. The Great Lake. The Black Lake, otherwise known as the Great Lake, is a large body of fresh water that sits landlocked upon the grounds of Hogwarts School and Witchcraft and Wizardry, just south of the school's castle. Its waters can be seen directly from the castle, as it is located below the school itself. Rowling's article, The Great Lake, explores all of the magical creatures residing in the Hogwarts Lake, including Grindylows, merpeople, and a semi-domesticated giant squid. She also discusses the lake's role in the Triwizard Tournament's second task in Goblet of Fire, mentions a scrapped scene from Chamber of Secrets, and reflects on the mysterious nature of real-life giant squids, suggesting they might have magical powers. The grounds of Hogwarts function partly as a nature reserve for magical creatures which have difficulty existing in Muggle-inhabited areas. The lake is full of creatures that would make a Muggle naturalist swoon with delight if terror did not seize them first. There are Grindylows, vicious little water demons, merpeople of a hardy Scottish strain, and a giant squid, which is semi-domesticated and permits students to tickle its tentacles on sunny days, when it basks in the shallows. Hogwarts Portraits. One of the most fascinating aspects of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is the presence of magical portraits adorning the walls of nearly every corridor and room. These portraits are more than just static works of art. They are enchanted to come alive, interact with each other, and even with the students and faculty at Hogwarts. In her article Hogwarts Portraits, Rowling delves into the magical nature of portraits at Hogwarts, outlining their classification system, properties, and creation. The magical portraits at Hogwarts are more than just static images. They possess the ability to talk and move, mimicking the behavior of the witch or wizard they represent. However, the painter's skill is not the determining factor in the portrait's interaction with viewers. Instead, it is the power of the individual depicted that influences their level of engagement. Through enchantments placed during creation, these portraits can imitate their subjects' favourite phrases and general demeanour. While some portraits like Sir Cadogan's and the Fat Lady's remain limited in their depth, others, especially those of headmasters and headmistresses, are capable of extensive interaction and knowledge sharing. These powerful portraits are carefully instructed by the individuals before their death, serving as repositories of invaluable memories and wisdom for future generations. If you want to learn more about headmasters' portraits specifically, check out my video, How Do Headmasters' Portraits Work? Are they alive? Harry Potter Explained. The Sorting Hat. In this article, Rowling explains the origins and abilities of the Sorting Hat, the enchanted object created by the 4 Hogwarts founders to sort students into their respective houses. The hat, imbued with the founders' intelligence and skilled in legilimency, assesses students' traits and preferences. Rowling also shares her creative process, detailing early sorting methods she considered before settling on the iconic talking hat. The sorting hat does not appear in my earliest plans for Hogwarts. I debated several different methods for sorting students, because I knew from early on that there would be 4 houses, all with very different qualities. The first was an elaborate Heath Robinson-ish machine that did all kinds of magical things before reaching a decision, but I did not like it. It felt at once too complicated and too easy. Next, I placed 4 statues of the 4 founders in the entrance hall, which came alive and selected students from the throng in front of them while the school watched. This was better, but still not quite right. Finally, I wrote a list of the ways in which people can be chosen: eeny, meeny, miny, moe, short straws chosen by team captains, names out of a hat, names out of a talking hat, putting on a hat, the sorting hat. Hat stool. In the wizarding world, the term hat stool refers to a rare phenomenon that occurs during the sorting ceremony, where the sorting hat takes an unusually long time to decide which house a new student should be placed in. This typically happens when the hat detects a particularly strong and balanced set of characteristics in the student that could make them a good fit for multiple houses. In Rowling's article Hat Stool, she describes the concept of a hat stool in more detail. An archaic Hogwarts term for any new student whose sorting takes longer than 5 minutes, this is an exceptionally long time for the sorting hat to deliberate, and occurs rarely, perhaps once every 50 years. Of Harry Potter's contemporaries, Hermione Granger and Neville Longbottom came closest to being hat stools. The sorting hat spent nearly 4 minutes trying to decide whether it should place Hermione in Ravenclaw or Gryffindor. In Neville's case, the hat was determined to place him in Gryffindor. Neville, intimidated by that house's reputation for bravery, requested a place in Hufflepuff. Their silent wrangling resulted in triumph for the hat. The only true hat stools known personally to Harry Potter were Minerva McGonagall and Peter Pettigrew. The former caused the hat to agonize for 5.5 minutes as to whether Minerva ought to go to Ravenclaw or Gryffindor. The latter was placed in Gryffindor after a long deliberation between that house and Slytherin. The sorting hat, which is infamously stubborn, still refuses to accept that its decision in the case of the latter may have been erroneous, citing the manner in which Pettigrew died as dubious evidence. Chamber of Secrets. With an entire novel in the Harry Potter series named after it, the Chamber of Secrets is, well, not so secret. But although the rumour of its existence was widely known, very few had the knowledge of where the entrance to the chamber was or how to open it. Of course, that all changed in Harry's second year at Hogwarts. He discovered that the Chamber of Secrets could be accessed by speaking Parseltongue in the bathroom in which Moaning Myrtle resides, which opened up a secret passageway down to the entrance of the chamber under the dungeons of the castle. In this article, Rowling delves into the origins and history of the Chamber of Secrets at Hogwarts. The subterranean Chamber of Secrets was created by Salazar Slytherin without the knowledge of his 3 fellow founders of Hogwarts. The chamber was, for many centuries, believed to be a myth. However, the fact that rumours of its existence persisted for so long reveals that Slytherin spoke of its creation and that others believed him, or else had been permitted by him to enter. There is no doubt that each of the 4 founders sought to stamp their own mark upon the school of witchcraft and wizardry that they intended would be the finest in the world. It was agreed that each would construct their own houses, for example, choosing the location of common rooms and dormitories. However, only Slytherin went further, and built what was in effect a personal, secret headquarters within the school, accessible only by himself or by those he allowed to enter. Perhaps when he first constructed the chamber, Slytherin wanted no more than a place in which to instruct his students in spells of which the other 3 founders may have disapproved. Disagreements sprung up early around the teaching of the dark arts. However, it is clear by the very decoration of the chamber that by the time Slytherin finished it, he developed grandiose ideas of his own importance to the school. No other founder left behind them a gigantic statue of themselves or draped the school in emblems of their own personal powers. The snakes carved around the Chamber of Secrets being a reference to Slytherin's powers as a Parselmouth. What is certain is that by the time Slytherin was forced out of the school by the other 3 founders, he had decided that henceforth the chamber he had built would be the lair of a monster that he alone, or his descendants, would be able to control, a basilisk. Moreover, only a Parselmouth would be able to enter the chamber. This, he knew, would keep out all 3 founders and every other member of staff. The existence of the chamber was known to Slytherin's descendants and those with whom they chose to share the information. Thus, the rumour stayed alive through the centuries. There's more, but if you want the rest, go and check out Wizarding World. Hogwarts School Subjects. In Rowling's article, Hogwarts School Subjects, she details the compulsory and elective subjects at Hogwarts. She explains that first-year students must take 7 subjects including Transfiguration, Charms, and Potions, along with flying lessons, and that after second year, students choose additional subjects like Arithmancy and Divination. However, it's worth noting that there are a lot more subjects than that. For a full breakdown of Hogwarts subjects, including electives, check out my video, All 25 Subjects Taught at Hogwarts. The Philosopher Stone. In this author's note by Rowling, she explains that the concept of the Philosopher Stone was not her invention, but a legendary substance in alchemy. The stone was believed to turn base metals into gold and produce the elixir of life, granting immortality. Historical figures like Sir Isaac Newton and the real Nicholas Flamel sought its creation. The stone's description in alchemical texts often includes red and white colors, which hold symbolic meanings. Cauldrons. In this article, Rowling discusses the history and use of cauldrons by both Muggles and Wizards, highlighting their transition from general cooking pots to essential tools for potion making in the magical world. She explains that modern cauldrons are enchanted to be lightweight and come in various advanced forms, such as self-stirring and collapsible. Rowling also notes the long-standing magical associations of cauldrons in folklore and their mundane role in the Harry Potter series. Apparently, Rowling at one time considered making a cauldron one of the Horcruxes, but opted for smaller, more portable objects instead. The Marauders Map. This article delves into the origins and creators of the Marauders Map at Hogwarts. James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, driven by a desire to support Lupin with his lycanthropy, created the map through advanced magic. The map detailed the castle's layout and tracked inhabitants' movements, activated by the phrase, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." The map was eventually confiscated by August Filch, but later passed on to Harry Potter by the Weasley twins. In this article, Rowling reflects on the map's narrative significance and her occasional regrets about its use. The Marauders Map subsequently became something of a bane to its true originator, me, because it allowed Harry a little too much freedom of information. I never showed Harry taking the map back from the empty office of the supposed Mad-Eye Moody, and I sometimes regretted that I had not capitalized on this mistake to leave it there. I've actually made a full video detailing the map's origins. You can find that by searching for how the Marauders Map was created, plus what happened to it after the war. Harry Potter explained. Alchemy. In Rowling's article Alchemy, she explores the concept of alchemy, explaining that alchemy may symbolize a spiritual journey towards enlightenment, rather than merely a materialistic quest. The article also discusses alchemy's mystical elements, its historical significance, and how its symbolism influenced the naming of characters like Rubeus Hagrid and Albus Dumbledore. The colors red and white are mentioned many times in old texts on alchemy. One interpretation is that they, like base metal and gold, represent two different sides of human nature, which must be reconciled. This was the inspiration for the Christian names of Rubeus, Red, Hagrid, and Albus, White, Dumbledore. These two men, both hugely important to Harry, seem to me to represent two sides of the ideal father figure he seeks. The former is warm, practical, and wild, the latter impressive, intellectual, and somewhat detached. Although there are books on alchemy in the library at Hogwarts, and I always imagined that it would be studied by very clever students in their 6th and 7th years, Hermione most uncharacteristically ignores the opportunity. Perhaps she feels, as Harry and Ron certainly do, that, far from wishing to make another Philosopher's Stone, they would be happy never to see another one in their lives. Hufflepuff Common Room. The Hufflepuff Common Room is one of the 4 houses designated social and gathering spaces within Hogwarts School. Tucked away in a cozy location near the kitchens, the Hufflepuff Common Room is known for its warm and inviting atmosphere. In this article, Rowling discusses the Hufflepuff Common Room in greater detail. She explains that the room is accessed through a specific barrel that must be tapped in the rhythm of Helga Hufflepuff, that security measures involve drenching unauthorized individuals in vinegar, and that the cozy common room is decorated in yellow and black colors and features plants, flowers, and wooden furnishings. She also challenges the stereotype that Hufflepuffs are less intelligent, highlighting the house's history of producing outstanding minds with qualities like patience and a strong work ethic. When I first planned the series, I expected Harry to visit all 4 house common rooms during his time at Hogwarts. There came a point when I realized that there was never going to be a valid reason to enter the Hufflepuff room. Nevertheless, it is quite as real to me as the other three, and I always knew exactly where those Hufflepuffs were going when they headed off towards the kitchens after lessons. And that's it for this episode of Extended Lore, where we focused on Hogwarts. Make sure to subscribe so that you can join me on future episodes where we discuss characters, magical creatures, potions, spells, Wizarding World locations, and just lore in general. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams, and forget to live